friend of mine said the theory to me about men is that in a man's mind, there is no problem until it's spoken.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Until it's spoken out loud. If it's not spoken out loud,
yeah, well,
we're pretending like there's no problem. Everyone around us doesn't need to know about anything.
yeah. Well, men are notorious for keeping stuff to themselves, not talking, not being vulnerable, bottling stuff up. I did it for years as a teenager and, early 20s. I didn't tell anyone anything. I was emotionally numb. And I think that probably came with part of the persona of being a fighter, being a champion, being someone who needs to provide. I can't be weak. I can't be vulnerable. So you end up bottling everything up. And I think that's common of most men.
So why do you think that happens?
Ooh. Society pressures, peer pressure, stuff that we tell ourselves that probably isn't true, but we think it is.
But is it bad, you think?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it has an effect. There's a level where probably, keeping some stuff back and not showing everything, being highly vulnerable and being highly emotional probably would be more detrimental than good. But you have to share something. You have to talk about your problems. You got to share where you're struggling or talk about anything, because if you don't and you bottle it up, that just builds and builds and builds, like compound interest, right? It's going to keep going and going and going and growing on you. And one day there'll be something and you'll have a meltdown or you'll explode and something will go very, very wrong for you.
You just don't know when.
Yeah, it's like a ticking time bomb.
But do we have to know who to open up to and when to open up to? Are those two key factors?
Yeah,
I can just see it how it can like almost mess someone's life up if they're just spilling out all the time what's going through their mind and their insecurities and their fears and all these weaknesses or whatever, the vulnerabilities. So are those two important factors, like when and how? For
sure. Like
who?
I wouldn't go and pull a random person off the street and start telling them how I feel emotionally and everything. I don't think anyone would ever really do that. There are right times, right places, right people, of course. And for me, that's more about self-awareness, is understanding yourself enough and learning about yourself enough to know when to expose your weaknesses or your vulnerabilities. And having someone who you trust is a key thing. Having someone will listen to you, I think.
Yeah.
If you've got those two things in somebody, then generally they're okay for you to talk to and to unload on them.
But if you're Aaron, so you're 20 years old, you're this fighter, you're this tough guy that everyone knows, never vulnerable, you keep everything to yourself. But what if you did have two people that you trusted, that you could spill your heart out to, but 99.9% of people that know you have no sight to your vulnerabilities? Do you think that's okay? Because you have your outlet.
Yep.
And you have people you trust.
Yep.
It's 2, it's 1, it's 5.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also me personally, my vulnerabilities, I don't want everyone in my social circle, in my, community to know all of my vulnerabilities.
Cool.
But there's vulnerabilities that I'd like to share with you, to share with my mom, to share with my sister, to share with my girlfriend, all these different people, but not the same vulnerabilities. It's like almost like a game.
Yeah, sure. Constant moving pieces around, right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting theory, because I think we all do that naturally. One way or another, whether you're consciously thinking about it or not, you will share with people what you feel comfortable to share with them. And if you're comfortable with that person in that moment and you want to share something, do it, right? But again, as long as you have that kind of trust and someone who will listen, then I think you're okay. If you unload everything on one person, you've then got to think about them and how they're going to react and how they're going to feel and what's going to happen to them if you tell them all of this. Like if you went to your mum, for example, with every worry, fear, anxiety, vulnerability you have and unloaded it on her, she's probably going to feel pretty terrible. Whereas if you just talk about the things maybe she can help with or give you advice with or just listen to that will help you, that will be okay. But if you went on for an hour talking,
she'd lose hope in me, yeah.
Or she would probably feel like she failed even as well, right?
Yeah.
So there's a whole load of things you've got to think about, all the aspects of how someone's going to react and their perception. Their perception is a huge thing in that. And I always like to talk to people about perception because we all experience it every day, but I don't think we think about other people's perceptions often enough.
Yeah.
So a really simple example, have you ever sent a text to someone and you've meant one thing and they've read it completely differently and come back at you and it started a whole different conversation or argument or confrontation? that's perception. Your perceived intention is different to how they've perceived it. And if you're not aware of that and they're not aware of it, that's how you get conflict. Whereas if you actually start to think about, okay, how are they going to perceive what I'm going to say? How's it going to affect them? You'll have much better conversations and interactions with people at any level.
Off air, we spoke about Stephen Bartlett, the Diary of the CEO. So I mentioned I watched the episode with Simon Sinek.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the episode, Stephen Bartlett asks him what his biggest insecurities are. Right. And immediately Simon Sinek said, "That's none of your business." And he goes on to explain, like, for him, there are things that he should not share about himself on a podcast to millions of people.
Absolutely.
But to the right person, share one point, and maybe someone else that he trusts, he'll share another point of insecurity, vulnerability. But is the purpose to, in terms of how you see it, to, if I share something with you, is the purpose for now you and me to kind of maybe bond over the thing that I shared with you, and together maybe help me see a light at the end of the tunnel? Is that the goal, or is it just an outlet of energy where I'm not the only one that knows? And because I've also, I've heard people say that you need an outlet, and that outlet doesn't necessarily have to be a friend or a partner. It could be you going to the woods and just screaming everything you have to let go of.
Could be a punch bag.
Or a punch bag, yeah. But verbally, like the verbal thing.
Yeah, if you speak it, right?
Yeah. So is that something that you play around with yourself, maybe with the people you work with or guys?
So. Yeah, certainly with, so I do a lot of coaching and mentoring as well for business owners across the UK as part of a government scheme. And I think that's definitely something I use with people. And it's, about finding the right person to feel comfortable to be vulnerable to. Again, the little pieces, giving and spreading it across others is great. But I don't think the purpose necessarily of sharing vulnerability is to bond, because if you're doing it with that purpose, it's kind of false, right? If I'm sharing vulnerability just to feel closer to somebody, that's not really the purpose of my vulnerability. My vulnerability is there because I need to share something. I need to get it out. I need to have an energy outlet. So for me, it's much more what you said about having an outlet of energy. And sometimes, a vulnerability or the way that people share things, they don't want you to talk back to them. They just want you to listen. They just want you to be there for them. And I think even, Simon Sinek said it, sit in the mud. It's that same concept. Just listen. Don't say anything. Just be there for that person. And in some of the teachings that we do in our courses, we have something similar, and it's called sit in the shit, which is the same kind of thing. And we can talk more about that. But we have a whole module and a course based around just listening, active listening. It's about learning how to prompt people to get more out of them, to get them to go on. If someone's saying something, don't stop them. Let them talk. Let them say what they have to say. Let them know you're listening, and prompt them. Keep asking them for more. How is that? How does it make you feel? Go on. Tell me more. Once you start doing that with someone, you'll get way more out of them than if you just listen to what they want to say on the surface level and then start responding. Humans have a really bad habit of listening to respond rather than listening to listen. Halfway through a sentence that someone said to us, we'll probably already have the reply we want to say back to them, and we haven't actually listened to what they're saying. And that's where you're listening to respond and say what you want to say to have value or have significance. That's not listening to the person and what they really need and adding value to them. So it's that active listening. And it's about, what are they actually trying to say to me? Why are they trying to say this? What do they need from me from this interaction? And for me, that's what sharing a vulnerability should be about.
And it's a personal, you feel, because also you mentioned that you bottled up a lot. So have you changed your mindset on that? Do you try and be as open as you can be?
Absolutely. The work I do now, I can't
not be.
I can't do what I do and preach what I preach and teach people the things I do without practicing it myself, because it'd be a bit of a hypocrite. I think I learned along the way of going through life, going through the motions and building a life which I thought I was happy in, to then realize that I'm not, that bottling things up was never the way to do it. And you have to talk. And if you're not talking, you're on a path of self-destruction. And that's ultimately where I ended up. And I learned from that. And the last 6-7 years is all about being rebuilding and being bigger and better from that.
Can I ask you about the destruction?
Yeah, sure. I haven't really talked much about this openly, to be fair. So this is a first. So
Only if you're comfortable.
yeah, no, absolutely. So I had a kid at 21, right? Got married at 22, very, very young, married to the wrong person, to be honest. And, you know, built a life of trying to sustain and be what I thought everyone else thinks I should be, not being what I wanted to be. Being this person who has to provide for this child, being this person who has to provide for this wife that I had and for this family, and this image of family that we all get taught is so important to us. And I wasn't right in that place. I wasn't happy. I wasn't living me. I wasn't living my true self. I wasn't, you know, passionate about what I was doing. Like I say, just going through the motions. And ultimately, it ended, or it led to divorce and a relationship breakdown and everything kind of completely falling apart. About 6-7 years ago now.
So it's just you going through the motions and just keeping everything inside. Like you feel like something's not right, but you're just keeping it.
Being that typical man in a relationship, I feel like this is what I should do. This is my family. This is what I should be providing for. Forget about myself. Forget about my happiness. Let's make everyone else happy and deal with that. And I became I became very much a people pleaser. I couldn't say no. You know, if someone wanted something, sure, let's do it. Someone wanted me to go somewhere, okay, let's go. Someone wanted my help, absolutely. I'd find myself doing all sorts of stupid stuff. Like, you know, for friends, even like, you know, I had a background in mechanics and engineering, so I'd end up fixing people's cars almost for free in the rain and the cold and snow, even outside, you know. I remember one year I replaced an engine in someone's car on a hill, slanted, in the snow. And I was doing it. I was like, what on earth am I doing? Why have I said yes to this? And like, maybe I got paid like £100. Like, this has taken me like 10 hours and it's cost me money probably, and I made no money from it.
Yeah.
But it's all because I couldn't learn how to say no. And because I became that people pleaser. And that was present in so many areas of my life, whether it's friends, family, relationship, work, everything. And I think everything combined there is what led me down to that self-destruction and being, okay, this is game over. I can't do this anymore. And then the relationship breakdown, you know, getting divorced, having 2 separate homes for kids.
Was that the switch, the divorce?
Yeah, definitely.
So like, is that like for you an opportunity even to like reevaluate yourself?
It really was. It was an opportunity for me to be like, okay, who am I? You know, really dig deep inside myself, a lot of self-reflecting, and work out who I am, what I want to do, and who I want to be, and how I want to add value to this life that we have. And that's where my passion and my pursuit of service and helping others, coaching and mentoring was born. And I think over the last 7 years that's where I've been working and perfecting that.
If you liked this video and you want to see more, make sure to subscribe below and don't forget to hit the notification button.